Well, good evening. One thing a week like this week teaches all of us is that we need to have some kind of wellspring to tap into when the going gets rough. And each day as we've gone into the courthouse, I've had this sense of kind of submerging into a deep-sea dive. And another way that I guess Dan has put it is to go into the city morgue. The air is just very thin and very stale. And my wellspring for this week, and actually it's been for quite a while, has been a passage at the end of Luke's Gospel. It's the story where the two on the road to Emmaus meet the risen Lord. And this passage has taken on a much deeper meaning during this week. And I've learned a bit more about what it means to confess that death does not have the last word. That in our hearts and in our lives we're offered the power that overcomes death. We hear in that story that Jesus was made known in the breaking of the bread, meaning many things, but especially that in his broken body, in giving himself up for us, the world is made new. And so we're to follow that. And the world is made new every time that we are able to sacrifice ourselves for the sake of truth. But at the close of the entire gospel, Jesus ascends into heaven. And the last note of the entire gospel tells us that the two returned to Jerusalem with great joy and were continually in the temple blessing God. And that seems to me to be the landmark of the Christian community. And it seems very appropriate to respond to that and to just give a moment of thanks. To thank God that we made it through this week, but also to thank the Lord for the very special hospitality that we've received over these last few months. So I would like to recognize a few people who are with us tonight, just so that we can share in that thanks. So I would like Jim Lafferty and Jack Nevins and Sister Teresa, if she's here, and Agnes and Charles Barrelon to just stand up and let everybody know your faces, and thank you for us, for taking us into your home. And I also feel a deep need to thank a dear brother who followed me down here from Connecticut and has just really let me know what it means to have a brother, because he's fully given himself to me. Chris Grants, will you please stand up? Thank you. And if I could just share one more reflection about tonight's theme of peacemaking. And it strikes me that we can't know what peacemaking means unless we have a sense of what it means to pray. There's many dimensions of prayer, and three dimensions that seem crucial is our individual relationship with the Lord, the times of alone, the times in silence, the times when we know that mystery. And then also, as we gather in small community prayer, when we know the presence of the Lord in our midst amongst the ones that we love most dearly. And thirdly, as Phil suggested last evening, the nature of testimony and witness is to be public. And that's the meaning of liturgy, to be in public witness, to do public work. And so the nature of our action was to be a prayer. And on people ask us, what does a court scene look like? Are you going to win? And as I've reflected about this passage from Luke, we hear a different kind of victory. not one in dollars and cents, but we have a victory that is unseen, but is known in people's hearts. The two who met him, their hearts were glowing. And so the action that we engaged in is a response to knowing what it means that Jesus poured out his life for us. And as Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist monk, teaches us so well, that the call to witness is to embrace the task and let go of the fruits, and that the fruits will come in their due time. And so I hope that we can all share in that giving up of the tangible victory that Americans are so used to, and come a bit closer to the victory that Jesus gives us on the cross. And at a deeper level, I've become to know the power of truth from the position of jeopardy. And so as we share in this coming week, we're drawn deeper into that risk together, but we're promised with the victory over death, over the stale air in that building. And so please, your smiling faces and your prayers into the building, because I think that's the deepest and most important thing that can happen next week. Not an acquittal necessarily, but that people's lives are touched and that people can know the truth that we're given, the peace that we're given through the testimony of Jesus and the victory over death and the resurrection. Thank you. Well, Billy told me to only take a few minutes, and I know I've taken more than that, but it might be helpful to just try to address a few questions, just to have a little bit of access to one another. Questions about this week that seem fuzzy, or maybe questions about this upcoming week.
I think that it might be good to mention the fact that there will be 9 sessions this coming week also. Is that true? I'll tell you about that.
Yeah, Billy will let people know more about that. Yes. Yes, with seemingly ridiculous questions, I mean statements from the judge, actions from the judge. The judge actually fell off his chair during the week. And there was actually an upbeat no that was Is there a possibility of mistrial? Well, there's been a list that continues to grow on and on about mistrial and about appeals, but that's further down the pike, and we need to take the trial on without looking at appeal, simply to try to bear out the call to disarmament, the justification that these weapons really have no right to exist, and that the service is to begin the process of dismantlement. I guess one thing that this week has also taught me is what justice is not. Most often when I've been arrested, I've refused to go through this process that strikes me to be a mockery. And I guess you have to do it one more time, always be open to doing it one more time, to know the incredible mockery that goes on in these buildings that they call houses of justice. But I think that the Spirit is strong enough amongst us to turn that around and flip it on its head. And we need to keep believing that as well, and to bring with us that spirit of justice, and not depend that it will come from behind the bench, or from the Pentagon, or from the White House, but from those who confess their lives to one another and bear that out in the way that they love one another. Mm-hmm.
Sign that this judge might be softening, being reached by the presence of the angry there?
Well, the caricature in the bulletin today suggests that we've been trying to soften the judge up. I think that everybody has a soft spot. And that's really to say that everybody has a strong spot. Because when we're able to share that with one another, that's where we know we're both human together. And that's been tough to do this week, and I really hope for a turnaround on that point. It's been really hard to be in there without all of you, and we've felt the rip-off of that. And it's been a way of trying to diffuse the energy and keep you away from us, because there's a greater sense of accountability when people were arrested the other day. The chant was, the world is looking, the world is looking. Everybody sees what is happening, and we will not let it go unnoticed. So I think that if people come into the courtroom with a common sense of solidarity, something will happen that we won't even be able to predict. But I think we need to stay open and hopeful about that. Just one more question, if there is one. Mm-hmm.
I was just wondering if it sort of sounds like your expectations have been augmented, but I wonder if you could speak to that. Have your expectations been augmented or diminished or altered in any way over the week?
Well, once again, I would say that the victory is to try to stay faithful to the truth. And I'm not sure, I really wouldn't say that that's been augmented. I think if we had a strategy, it was to try to stay true to the spirit that took us into GE and allowed us to be led right to those nose cones. I think also what we were very well aware of is that what we were to do is to help to expose the mockery and let it go on to a point that we had to say nothing more, and that it was perfectly clear. And we've had to go through the first stages of that. And we'll have to go through the next stages of that. But I imagine it will reach a pinnacle where something dramatic will be called for from us and from all of you. And so perhaps we can pray over that this weekend, that we'll be able to think on our feet and really respond from our hearts to a tough situation, but to try to make something essentially inhuman, something very, very human. Well, thank you so much for keep coming out here, and God bless you all.